New Jersey from Pennsylvania. That old funky nasty Delaware.
At times it's so low you can walk across it, and there are times you can't.
I'm from Trenton, born in South Trenton, from an area that was taken over by eminent domain, so thousands of families were just totally displaced and spread across the city, and others just left the state.
We have outreach programs, we have employment programs, we have forklift certification programs, and as the men's group, we all embrace each other as men. Normally men don't surrender to the conditions of the environment.
That in Trenton State Prison, people are locked up for 23 hours a day in a tiny box in solitary, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, even when we know that this does irreparable harm to people's psyche and sets folks back so that they might actually be dangerous, those who weren't dangerous when they came in.
If you was at the rally last week, 2 days prior to the rally, the front cover of the Trentonian newspaper, only thing they talked about was ex-offenders and criminals. And what we try to do with reentry awareness is put a new face on what that looks like. Far too often, the media puts out there certain images of what people that are coming home from prisons are about, what we're doing. But I like to say that we're doing more than what you see on news and what you see on TV.
You can sit up here and you can speak all this, the jargon, and you know, you come with the college degrees and you speak as if you have the solution, but if you haven't been through what the individuals have been through, all that trauma and things of that nature, you can't really relate. You know what I'm saying? There's been situations in your program, you know what I'm saying, the father program, where people have violated my trust and others by violating their HIPAA rights and put it in their face, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you know, if you continue to do this, I'm gonna get you locked up in a mental institution and this and that. I walked out of your program crying.
Drugs, poverty, lack of jobs, steel mills leaving, and then the new influx of the gangs and things of that nature has just took the city by storm. And it's only 7.5 miles, and it just really took it by storm. And now it's more, everybody want to be killers, everybody want to be tough, and it's just really no more love. We're missing love.
Every prayer to our God, every word of worship with one accord. Every prayer to our God. Sing hallelujah.
That's when my life changed. Prison actually helped change my life. I hear a lot of people talk about prison, but prison was like that stop I needed to get my thoughts together, to find out who I were on the inside, and then that person started emerging. And it took a long time for that person to come out. I did my crime, I was guilty of it. It wasn't like I went in there like, I didn't do it. You know, the law that was on the books, I looked at the law, it said, yeah, you did that, so I did that. So my other thought was, I gotta get out of here, and I gotta be the person I'm supposed to be.
When you take a look at how Trenton looks today, you can actually trace it back to the tax base. When homeowners moved out of the city of Trenton into the surrounding areas of Trenton, it increased the surrounding municipalities' tax base, but it decreased Trenton's tax base quite a bit.
This is the wealthiest nation in the world, and we are one of the wealthiest states. New Jersey is one of the wealthiest states and one of the wealthiest nations in the world. So why on earth should our capital municipality have a $527 million tax shortfall? There's no excuse for that, right? If there's so much money concentrated here, there's no reason, even if you believe our taxes should be lower and that government shouldn't meddle, there's no reason there should be a tax shortfall. It doesn't make any sense. And it's not because the rich and the middle class just can't afford to pay all these taxes. It's because there is no middle class and because the rich are getting around it. And any, walk around Trenton will tell you that the private investment is not cutting it. Right? There needs to be some kind of investment of public dollars. There needs to be some kind of closure of this gap in order for that community to recover. And I don't think it's had that since, the 1970s.
As a youngster, I grew up in this neighborhood. What's good, you'll see pockets of redevelopment as we go along. midst of things that aren't so good. But you can see it's coming back and forth here and there.
Every walk of life, every fashion style, every culture, you're walking through the middle of this crowd, and it's just so refreshing because no longer am I walking down a street with everybody that looks exactly like me, or I'm walking down a street where I feel so completely out of my element. It was like, oh, well, that person looks a little conservative. Oh, well, that person looks a little edgy. Like, this is cool. Like, I just fit somewhere in the middle.
How I got plugged into the art scene here was through an event called Art All Night. Art All Night is put on by Artworks Trenton, which is the go-to art center in the city of Trenton. Art All Night's a 24 hours party, art party. I showed up one day for Art All Night just to check it out, and I was just amazed. There were, I would say, 10,000 people in this place. They had music going, they had fantastic art going, they had all sorts of just wonder going on. And I'm like, this is Trenton?
When the change is on the television, are you gonna be live or watching from a distance? Somewhere in between, maybe barely off screen, but on the scene. So in the future you don't find yourself wishing. Just the other week I heard a brother down the street talking about how he's frustrated when turning his cheek. He was saying something now about by any means necessary. Grief can't be the only thing hereditary.
I didn't like Trenton like growing up. Like, I was like, nah, that's where all the violence is, all this is, and all that is. I'm not for it. It wasn't until like I became like more socially aware where I was like, okay, my bad, I'm missing a way bigger picture here. And it was, I came to that through the artwork. Like, that's how I found out all of that out. That's how I discovered it all.
After our pockets have been stripped bare to see there's still the blinding light of a silver line to lose change.
There's always been, I think, a dynamic art scene in Trenton, but there were fewer spaces, there were fewer places to congregate, and certainly Artworks was one of them. We evolved as the city has evolved. It was very hard to get people to come out to Trenton. People had moved to the suburbs. They had ideas about what Trenton had become, which weren't very flattering, and it was difficult to get people to come out for events, for classes, and the like. Artworks soldiered on, but we were competing with other art centers in surrounding communities. Trenton is, albeit a small city, a very beautiful one with kind of its own gritty ethos and its own real kind of, I would, for lack of a better word, orneriness, refusal to give up and to basically take pride in what others kind of think is not necessarily a flattering aspect.
Neighborhood was definitely a blighted zone. We had violence, we had gangs, we had situations that just were not good for any community to prosper. And with that all being said, people still lived here. People still made a living here, meager, but they made a living here. And a lot of times how they made their living was not normal fashion of a 9-to-5 job. We have musicians that want to come here, musicians that appreciate the crowd, and of course we feed them. We feed them very good food, and we make them feel at home. We have some artists. We have one Pulitzer Prize winning poet who comes as often as he can. We have nationally recognized artists. We have some lawyers that come here. In fact, a lot of lawyers come here. Must be their retreat.
People look at the dynamics of what's going on in the city of Trenton right now. They say, well, there's crime over here, crime over there, these young kids doing this, these young kids are doing that. Let's really pull this back and analyze what's going on. It's easy to be 20,000 feet above and just say, well, these kids are bad or this area is bad. Okay, we look at it. We have a large portion of individuals in the city of Trenton who are living below poverty. About 148% below poverty. In our city right now, you got guys who are selling $2 and $3 bags of heroin. $2 and $3 bags. Do the math on that. How many bags do they have to sell before they can make some money and really to make some progress in their pockets? Majority of the time, these guys are making money just to eat. I'm not gonna make no excuses for these guys. But if we're not making sure they're eating, we cannot provide services for them. We cannot be there for them if they can't hear us. Our goal, our mission has to be able to feed them, whether that's mind, body, or spirit.
We have hot food. We have beef hot dogs and pork sausages. You know some people don't eat pork, so we have beef hot dogs. We have more sausages than hot dogs. Once everyone gets served, there may be seconds for the hot dogs and the sausages. Next is this. We have our vegetables over here. We have salads. We have potatoes. We have onions and things of that nature. After that, we have our dairy products, our cheese. We have pastas. We also have meat as well. And over there, we have fruits. We have nectarines, peaches, grapes, apples, strawberries, blueberries. And some of my Caribbean friends, we got pomegranates.
Last year, we had over 1,200 volunteers, and we moved over 2.7 million pounds of food. And that food goes to all the soup kitchens, pantries, and shelters, like Trenton area soup kitchen, Crisis Ministries, Salvation Army, Home Front, Mount Carmel Guild. I won't go through them all. I'll spare you that part, but yeah, so our food reaches all the places that people are seeing, like individuals and families.
I'm Pastor Bradley from the Princeton Deliverance Center, 301 Southern Street here in Trenton. And I've been working with Mercer Street now for about 26 years. So many people are in need because of unemployment, cuts in food stamps, and the price of food. So this really helps their food. It's a supplement to what they receive already. And we're just glad to work with Mercer Street. They really go out their way to contact other agencies and make sure that we get the foods to give to the community.
I realized that everything that I've been doing in the nonprofit field, everything I wanted to do in the nonprofit field, sort of like culminated into what Mercer Street Friends is doing now. We help the educators to be able to do what they are supposed to do. They educate the children, but sometimes they're not trained or they don't have the resources to deal with all the other issues, all the other baggage that these children are coming to school with.
Poverty, crime, mental health issues, they felt that the most important place to begin was to get into a school. Through that conversation, I became their partner in the first community school in Trenton, New Jersey. After a comprehensive needs assessment, the team at Mercer Street Friends began to come into the building. They had applied for a multi-million-dollar grant from the federal government. Unfortunately, they did not receive the grant, but their dedication to this program was so great that they agreed to move forward and find funding elsewhere.
I think one of the great victories that the ultra-rich have accomplished, though, since the 1970s is tricking us into thinking these fights are only social, that these battles are only social, or that we fight these battles alone. So there's lots of really cool groups in Trenton, all over New Jersey, and all over the United States that do a lot of really great work. There's art groups, there's activist groups, and you know, in New Jersey we have a strong Black Lives Matter movement. We have a relatively strong labor movement, even though the labor movement has been significantly weakened in the United States all over the place. But a lot of these movements don't talk to each other, and some of them don't even see themselves as political. But you know, in the long term, we're going to have to start thinking about breaking down those silos and working as a movement if we want to make change in Trenton, in New Jersey, anywhere, because this is, I think, the ultimate tactic of the the ultra rich is to divide us, is to make us think that this issue isn't political and this issue is political, but it stays in that silo, and this issue is for you to worry about and this issue is for you to worry about. At the end of the day, all of these issues are linked, and they're all linked because we're all getting robbed blind, whether you're in the middle class or whether you are in a community that has been particularly ravaged by this sort of runaway inequality.
All right, well, thank you very much. We are Papa Deluxe in the Main Street Group.